So, is PlayStation changing their strategy with bringing games to PC? A lot of people think so. The recent announcement about Spider-Man 2 coming to PC a lot quicker than other PlayStation titles has all sorts of theories starting to swirl. And there's been a variety of responses out there. One that I saw was that, well, PlayStation's going third party, which I think this is mostly said in jest. I don't think we're going to ever see big PlayStation titles landing on Xbox and the Nintendo Switch. There's also people saying, well, day and date's coming. You're going to start to be able to get PlayStation games, big first-party games on PC day and date. There are pretty big brand loyalists that are like, hey, this is a betrayal. You shouldn't be giving PC guys our games this fast. And then others are now saying, hey, there's just no reason to have a PlayStation. Just get PC and wait for the games if they're going to start coming this quickly. I think all of these responses are a bit extreme. That's just kind of par for the course when something like this happens. Everybody just does knee-jerk reactions. It doesn't actually look at the facts and look at what has been said up to now. I made predictions about this. I even thought that this was the window of time we were going to start to see ports happen. There was an interview in the wake of God of War 2018 getting ported to PC, and one of the developers had said that they had actually changed the pipeline of God of War Ragnarok, and I thought, well, that's going to mean future games can come over quicker. And at the time I said, I think 12 to 18 months is the sweet spot. The game's still kind of relevant. People are probably still talking about it. 1 to 1.5 years is a good time frame, especially if like a year in they put it on PS Plus and then a little while later it goes to PC. Now, people disagreed with me. They said 1 year is not long enough. Folks will just wait. What about DLC? Sometimes it takes that long just to get DLC. And others argued that this would undercut demand for the console. And to be honest, I will admit this situation does raise a lot of questions, but I'm not convinced there is a tectonic shift at PlayStation, because just this year, Herman Hulst told shareholders they would not be doing this with their big tentpole first-party titles. That's always going to be where you see changes signaled first. They tell the shareholders, they tell the people that are in charge of the money if they're going to be making a change. So I don't think this port is signaling a change. I just think it's signaling more efficient ports, and maybe something happened at Insomniac, and we're going to get into that because there's a lot to consider here, okay? First, I want to consider the timing shift. What does it mean? We're going to look at Horizon, God of War, and Spider-Man, and how the timing has slowly moved, and now it's kind of speeding up. Secondly, is day and date even something reasonable given everything that PlayStation has been saying and doing? And that's related to the PS5 Pro and the PS6 and the future. And lastly, why aren't we getting DLC for Spider-Man 2? Is this related to a Venom game or the Wolverine game? We're going to get into all of that. So every day I upload a video, I give you my quick thoughts, then we go to a live stream and we can talk about it and debate it. So if you like this kind of content, hit like and subscribe. It is honestly understandable why the Spider-Man 2 PC port announcement caused this big stir. If you look at the timing shift of sort of the big three titles, and to me those big titles are God of War, Horizon, and Spider-Man. So first let's just consider Horizon, and it's more important I think to look at the most recent, which is Horizon Forbidden West. It took 25 months to come to PC, so it was just a little bit longer than 2 years, and some of this was likely related to Burning Shores. If they're going to do DLC for a game, the pattern from PlayStation seems to be that they want all the DLC to come out first before the port to PC happens. Now, this makes sense, and it honestly, I think, passively pushes against the day and date predictions that people are making. It means that PlayStation views PC as an additive marketplace. It's not a platform that will receive content at the same time as PlayStation. Now, this obviously touches on Spider-Man 2 not getting DLC, and we'll discuss that in a moment. So secondly, let's look at God of War Ragnarok. It took 22 months to arrive on PC after its release. So this is slightly different than Horizon Forbidden West. Instead of being a little bit longer than 2 years, it was a little shorter. But again, they wanted to wait. They got Valhalla out, and Valhalla is, of course, packaged with the God of War Ragnarok PC port. Now, the reason I don't think it's helpful to look at Horizon Zero Dawn or God of War 2018 is because that was sort of before they had a cadence and expectation set. God of War 2018 was like 4 years after release, and Horizon Zero Dawn was 3 years. I don't think that's informative to cadence and strategy here. I think it's more helpful to look at the more recent ports, which brings us to Spider-Man 2. it will land on PC just 15 months after its release date. So this is very different. If you look at Horizon Forbidden West, was just a little bit longer than 2 years, and now Spider-Man 2 is going to be just a little bit longer than 1 year. Now, my personal opinion is this is likely related to things Insomniac made choices about. They clearly had some kind of a change of plans. We'll touch on that later when we discuss the lack of DLC for Spider-Man 2, the potential of a Venom game and the rumors, as well as the Wolverine game. But some would disagree with me and they'd say, no, day and date's coming. They're going to start putting the big PlayStation games out at the same time as they release on PC as well as PlayStation. And I myself thought that they would move toward this by the time the PlayStation 6 arrived. But a lot of the recent developments have changed my mind. I think the biggest thing that changed my mind about PlayStation moving to a day-and-date strategy with PC were comments made by Herman Hulst. And as I already stated, what is said to shareholders is really what typically signals change before it happens. There was the time that the Xbox CFO said this at a Wells Fargo summit about you're going to see first-party games landing on PlayStation and Nintendo. They're no longer considered competitors. And then a few months later, it gets confirmed and it's publicly announced. So in a similar fashion, Herman Hulst told shareholders that when it comes to PC, they have a dual approach. And for live service games, day and date is the plan. That's been the plan since they first started talking about doing live service games. But he had the following to say about the other side of the approach. Pulling from VG Charts here, he said, but with our tentpole titles, our single-player, narrative-driven titles that are, as you saw in the presentation, the backbone of what PlayStation Studios has delivered in recent years and in our history. We take a more strategic approach and we introduce our great franchises to new audiences, and we are finding new audiences that are potentially going to be very interested in playing sequels on the PlayStation platform. And obviously, PC Master Race users really bristle at this idea. They would never consider coming to a console just to play a sequel, but another development really does seem to indicate that PlayStation's plan is working. Pulling from Games Radar, on February 2nd, Sony broadcast its earnings call for the third quarter of the 2022 fiscal year, featuring CFO Hiroki Totoki. The company's CFO revealed data that shows 30% of those who own a PS5 console around the world never owned a PS4 console. Now, at the time, that was roughly 20 million users and is probably climbing if the trajectory holds. So if you take these two things as a pair, they really signal that day and date is simply not something that PlayStation is planning on pursuing. And when 30% of the owners of their current console didn't even have the previous console, that's a pretty strong motivation to stay the course with the plan outlined by Herman Hulst. And I think it becomes even clearer when you consider the PS5 Pro and the PS6. When we first started hearing about the PS5 Pro, the targets for performance seemed insane. We were hearing 4K 60 and 8K 30, which honestly still sounds a bit crazy, but now that the PS5 Pro hands-on previews have landed, it's clear that the technology is winning people over, even the skeptics. But it was another part of those early leaks that I think we really need to look at. Insider Gaming was one of the first outlets to delve into the information about the PSSR technology before it was officially announced. And their report from March 18th of 2024 said the following: PlayStation's ambitions with PSSR is to achieve 4K 120 FPS and 8K 60 FPS. Whilst they are not the targets for the PS5 Pro due to hardware limitations, it is the internal goal for PSSR in future console iterations. So this is a clear signal that PSSR is aiming at 4K 120 and 8K 60 on the PlayStation 6. Now, this type of ambition does not sound like a company who feels like they're going to be releasing their games day and date on PC. And you might ask, well, why? Why does it say that? Well, they're creating an environment where their developers are not just going to prioritize building for PlayStation hardware first, they're going to prefer it. And that sentiment could start to be shared by third-party developers as well. I've talked about this a lot with how Mark Cerny went to devs and asked them what they wanted. This is going to be the preferred platform to build for. Day and date on PC would undercut this. You'd be asking your developers to do parallel development instead of prioritizing all of this hardware and software that PlayStation has paid to develop. Now, this is something that was observed about many times when Xbox did their strategy shift. Once they started launching their games on PC and Xbox at the same time, Xbox fans never got a game built specifically for their console. PlayStation's pushing for an ecosystem where games are going to be enhanced by their own devs and by third-party devs specifically for their console. This is a hardware-centric strategy, and the PS5 Pro is already closing the gap on PC when you compare it to consumer-level PCs you can buy at like Best Buy or Amazon. If that gap further closes with respect to performance and power when the PlayStation 6 arrives, day-and-date releasing on PC would just cloud that market advantage. You would want to have your first-party games, your biggest games, out there in the market at performance levels not really seen on other devices unless you go to really high-end rigs, and certainly it doesn't seem like Xbox is going to be competing in that power narrative anymore either. I don't think they would abandon that advantage that they're seemingly fighting for by launching their games day and date on PC. So this completely changed my mind about, yeah, they might do day and date in the future with PS6. However, there's one last elephant in the room that we've got to talk about: Spider-Man 2 and the lack of DLC. When I first saw the Spider-Man 2 announcement for PC, the first thing I said was, well, hey, what about the DLC that we were supposed to get? And the answer was very clearly stated by the PlayStation blog. They have no additional story content planned, and that could obviously be playing with the wording, and maybe they're going to surprise everybody. There could be a holiday DLC. There's this rumored 30th anniversary showcase. If that actually is true and it happens, maybe we hear about it. Maybe there's kind of shadow drop it and it's this big surprise, and then it's also included in the PC port. I think that would be a great surprise, but there's also some theories that I have about why Spider-Man 2 may be headed to just never getting any DLC. And the first is the rumored spin-off Venom game. Okay, they could have started fleshing things out to build the DLC, maybe centering around playing as Venom, and it just became too big and needed to stand on its own. So we could be looking at something like a Miles Morales sized game. It wouldn't be full price. It would be built in the existing city, and it would take sort of the crazy, bombastic Venom gameplay and flesh it out a bit with different abilities and a very different play style. So that's one theory. Maybe they just kind of decided to do that as an offshoot thing. And another theory is that a lot of those leaked plans just got completely scrapped. And that could have been because the reception around Spider-Man 1 DLC was maybe not just strong enough, or another idea is that they just wanted to move on to Wolverine. Given Insomniac's cadence of game delivery, it's very possible they decided, hey, it's best for us just to move on to the next big title rather than work on a DLC or a spin-off Venom game. They might just sort of see the efficiency of their bandwidth being better spent on a big tentpole title like Wolverine. We also saw the roadmaps that leaked where Insomniac was going to be taking online and adding it to Marvel games later after they had already launched. Now, if that wasn't totally scrapped, it'd be a pretty cool update that would, not be planned story content, but it would go right along with the marketing of be greater together. Co-op in Spider-Man 2 was always suspected given that very first trailer as well as the marketing. So if they added that, that'd be exciting. If they don't do anything, we'll just kind of have to wait to see what Insomniac does next. So where does that leave us with the question of PlayStation and PC games? It is undeniable that strategies at companies surrounding gaming are not permanent, and they are oftentimes in flux. PlayStation is, at some level, changing how they bring games to PC with Spider-Man 2, but they're just not changing in the way that many people are predicting, because no matter how you shake it, day-and-date PC releases of big PlayStation tentpole titles is antithetical to so much of what PlayStation has been signaling. Herman Hulst had his remarks about their dual approach. They require PSN logins on Steam for single-player games like God of War Ragnarok, which has not gone over very well with the Steam audience. The hardware and the performance aspirations that they have for the PS5 Pro and the PS6, the way they prioritize what developers want. So many developers have indicated that multi-platform development is less preferable to building for one platform first. So why would PlayStation ask both first-party and even third-party relationships that they have with exclusives to start building games for more than one platform? From where I sit, PlayStation plans to use PC and to slowly eclipse it in power at a consumer level. Now, you're likely always going to be able to outspend the power of a PlayStation or really any console with the latest and greatest hardware, but consumers willing to do that are in the minority. And if I'm right about Sony's long-term plans, then day and date on PC just doesn't fit in to the approach that I see them taking. But those are just my thoughts. Now it's time to hear your thoughts. You can do that in a comment below. I feature those comments in a live stream that we head to next. It hits right here. That will also be pinned in the comments below. So if you like this content and you want more like it, please remember to hit like, share, and subscribe.